home where millions of people are yet to receive their 350 Rand COVID-19 grant for March. Sassa, that's the social agency itself, says it's working around the clock to pay them. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the grant last year to try to mitigate the devastation of the pandemic. Today, here on eNCA, we're finding out how helpful the grants have been. Our reporters Aviwe Mtila, Lethiwe Mdlule and Ronald Masinda have been up and about getting a sense of whether this grant is making a difference during these tough times. Aviwe, good afternoon. Let's start with you. Where exactly are you now, and what can you tell us about what you've been finding out?
I'm in Linden at the moment, talking to the voice of those millions of people who we spoke to in the front line with mixed emotions. While they appreciate the grant itself, they say that it is a bit too little, Brad Dan. So now I am with one of the members of the Pay the Grants organization, which is an extension of C19 People's Coalition, just to touch on some of their plans as they represent those millions of people. Thank you for joining us at eNCA, Nathan Taylor. But what are some of the demands that you have towards government?
Okay, sure. So for our demands, you will see us with other partners of Pay the Grants campaign going to tomorrow to actually hand over the open letter that details these. For our demands themselves, they are pretty simple. First is obviously to extend the COVID SID grant, and not for another 3 months, but until a basic income guarantee can actually be implemented. And then on the point you're raising, it is actually to raise the grant to, at the very least, the set food poverty line, which is currently at 585 Rand. And then it is also to expand the base of the COVID SID grant to also include caregivers who, whether or not they actually apply for the child support grant on behalf of their children. And then it is to actually reassess the harsh criteria that Sassa puts on the grant application process itself, and the horrible administration that we have seen from Sassa to date.
Okay, Nathan, realistically though, are these demands sustainable? I mean, you want the grant to be permanent now, but we're given that government can't even pay the March beneficiaries, let alone increase it to the poverty line of 585. Is it realistically sustainable?
So to extend the COVID SID grant at the current levels of applicants at a 350 Rand a month would cost 29 billion for 12 months. To extend it to the food poverty line would cost 48 billion. To include the lower range of caregivers into that grant at that level would cost 62 billion. These are huge figures. But then when we look at them relatively, when we talk about illicit cash flows, when we talk about government corruption, inefficiencies, when we talk about undeclared income and the possibility of taxes on the net wealth of high income individuals, we do not actually have a situation of a crisis of public funding. We have a situation of a crisis of political will. It's not about whether we can afford to sustain this grant. It's about whether can we afford not to.
Okay, just lastly, Nathan, I understand you have plans on the grant of mass movement. Can you just detail some of the things that Pay the Grants will be doing?
Okay, sure. So we're in discussions right now with different groups, communities and organizations around the country. We are looking at a week of national action in the last week of April to oppose the planned termination of the SID grant in various ways. We obviously have the 27th of April coming up, Freedom Day, or as many people do rightly say in this country, Unfreedom Day. And for that we will be taking also our openness and our demands that we are making into public spaces. And from that, when we're looking at Wednesday and Thursday, we are also looking at the issue of food prices in supermarkets. We are looking at the issues of faith communities and whether they're actually coming out in support. We are also holding a press conference to be planned for the next week to also detail what is happening and detail our demands to the public and whether we have actually received a response to this letter by then or not. This will be culminating towards the Friday on the 30th for actually gathering outside the actual space of the COVID SID grant itself, insofar as Sassa offices and post offices, where claimants will be queuing in huge queues every single day to just find out whether they can actually apply, whether there's money there today or not, regardless of what they've been told.
Okay, thank you very much. Nathan Taylor from Pay the Grant says they plan mass action as that SRD grant is expected to come to an end at the end of April. They say, of course, this must be extended permanently for those that are unemployed, the social grants in the country. And in fact, they want the amount to be increased from 350 to at least meet the poverty line of 585 Rand, Bradan.
Thank you very much, Aviu Mtila. Let's go to